Hollins, Utah State Legislator, and we have Vince. We'll be moderating. So we're just going to do kind of an interview, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. So thank you for everyone who showed up, and we'll turn it over to Vince to get started.
Yeah, thank you. This is the second part of our Legislative Roundup week, and we're really happy to have Representative Sandra Hollins down here from District 21. Thank you for making it through the weather that I know that you had and that we talked about a little bit before. But let me tell you a little bit about Representative Hollins, and I think you can probably tell us more about yourself than I'll be able to. But you've been in the legislature since 2015, right?
Yes, that's correct.
That's a fairly long time.
It's a good time. It's been, a long time.
Yeah. And you're Democrat. You're the assistant minority whip.
Yes.
I think most people don't know what a whip is. Could you help explain a little bit about that? There's the old Seinfeld joke where, what does the whip do? Well, they actually go in and physically whip the people in line, give them to vote a certain way. But that's not it, is it?
I would like to do that
Okay.
sometimes, but
Okay.
I'm not allowed to.
Yeah.
So what we do, so there's four of us, and we made history actually this last session because we had all women in leadership in the House and in the Senate on the Democrat side. And so we actually made history this year. And so my job is we have kind of broken our jobs up into and kind of focus on what our strengths are. And so, our minority leader is Representative Angela Romero. Her and I found out that our strength is creating relationships. And we are able to build relationship and come to consensus on a lot of bills that our colleagues are running, the Democrats are running. And so that's what we do. Our job is to push bills through. And so Representative Rosemary Lesser and Representative Jennifer Daly Provo, they handle the budget side. They make sure that we have the funds for our bills and making sure that our needs and what we're asking for in the budget is met. And so I'm not sure what the Republicans do and how they handle it, but that's what our job is. And so especially during those last days of session, we work well with the other side of the aisle, with their leadership team rather, making sure that our bills are going through, making sure our bills are on the board and pretty much taking care of the Democrats in the House.
Yeah, and you mentioned working well with the Republicans. I mean, when you look at the numbers in the House, 61 Republicans and
Yes.
13 Democrats.
Yes.
On the Senate side, 23 Republicans, 6 Democrats.
Yes.
How do you function in a minority that's I mean, of course, it's reverse in other states, where the Republicans are in the minority. But how do you go about that process of working with a supermajority that really doesn't necessarily need the votes to get things passed from the Democrats? But I do hear from my interns that I sent up there is a lot of work between the Republicans and Democrats. And then there's some other things that don't work out so well. Maybe we can talk about that. But how does that process happen?
Yeah, well, let me say this. Also, some of the Republicans they'll reach out to us when they're passing certain bills because they need our vote to push their bill over and to get their bills through. Also, but for me, I can say when I'm running a bill, it usually starts. I'm probably going to start looking at bills. This is March, between April and May. I'm going to start looking at bills. And with that, I start looking at who do I need to bring to the table to start for this bill to be able to pass. And a lot of times that's Republicans. A lot of times I work with them. A lot of times I have them as my Senate sponsor. And so it's a lot of negotiating, collaborating that occurs way before the bill is out there. And I think a lot of that is what the public don't see. They see us on the House floor, they see us debating. And a lot of times it's collaboration and that bringing everybody to the table almost for a year. And for some people, it's 2 or 3 years to get a bill passed. And so that's how we've managed to get things done up there, even being a super minority.
A couple of years ago when we did the legislative roundup, the issue of redistricting had come up.
Oh my gosh, I still got trauma around that.
Yeah, tell me why.
you know, it's I was on the redistricting team. I was asked to be on the redistricting team, and you know, I did the a lot of the maps and everything that was done. No matter what you do, nobody was going to be happy with what you do, and so the three of us who was on there, we felt like, well, let me see, I felt like, you know, we were going to battle Goliath with just a rock. And so we did the best we could that was going to that was going to reflect our constituent voices. But a lot of times, in the end, the public wasn't happy, and I know that there's an ongoing lawsuit about it, and I know that the public wasn't happy about it. I know my constituents were happy with me, and that's what really matters because what they really wanted, part of my district, the Guadalupe area, I had residents over there reached out and asked if they could be placed back in my district because they felt more like they belonged on the west side instead of the east side of Salt Lake City. They felt they had more of a connection, and so I was able to get that back into my district, which was a win. But I know that there was a lot of losses, and I ended up not voting for the congressional map and I think the state school board map. But I did vote for the Senate map and the
Would we have been better off? There was an independent commission. Would we have been better off with that independent commission, their recommendations, or what's the perspective from the Democrat?
you know, I think they did a lot of good work. I think they did a lot of hard work, and we have a lot of people coming at us from all different perspectives. But I did think they did a wonderful job with doing outreach. I don't know if those were exactly the best maps, but I think in between what they did and I think in between what we were looking at, I think we could have we came up with the best we could.
A few years ago, I remember reading about something called the Utah Way and the Utah Way Compact. And it was the idea that on certain issues, one that was highlighted a lot was the LGBTQ issues and discrimination and employment and housing. That was something that was different than in other places, and that the Democrats and the Republicans were working together in that sort of way. But when HB 455 came up, which didn't pass, but that was the bill that was prohibiting questions about diversity in education and state interviews and banning certain school lessons and DEI bans and that sort of thing. You were quoted in the Tribune as saying, "If I have to be honest, I'm tired. I'm more than tired physically. I'm tired spiritually and mentally from fighting. It seems we keep taking 2 steps forward and 5 steps back. I don't know what to tell my community anymore. I don't know how to make them feel safe." What was in your mind when you were saying that? Can you kind of expand that? I mean, it's there's a lot there, but I believe you said that on the House floor.
I did.
What was going on at that time? It seemed like Gerke wrote about this in the Tribune and said this is the undoing of the Utah way.
Yeah, and I meant everything I said. I have a good friend of mine, Dr. William Smith, who is a professor at the University of Utah, and he coined this phrase, racial battle fatigue. And him and I were texting back and forth. Him and I had checked back and forth. He said, "Yeah, this is what you have. This is what it is." And what I meant by that is that, yeah, we have taken some steps forward in this state. We were able to pass a bill around hate crime. That was forward. We were able to do the compact. That was forward. And then we were able to pass my bill on ethnic studies in the schools and putting together that commission. That was a huge win for the state of Utah. Then this year, it seemed like we started taking steps back. And it's tiresome to constantly fight. It can be tiresome, but let me tell you this: I'm no longer tired. I done went through all the emotions, and I'm no longer tired. I'm now in fighting mode and educating people mode, and let's see what we can do to battle this mode. But it can have a take on you. As you know, I am the only Black woman up there, the first Black woman ever elected, and not only do I proudly represent my district, District 21, but there are a lot of people who don't live in my district who look to me as their representative because they feel I understand. Because of my lived experience, I understand what they're going through. And so I'm the one in the community, particularly in the Black and the African community, who get those phone calls when their children are struggling in the school system or being bullied as a result of racism in the school system. I'm the one that get those calls all over the state. And when I encourage them to call out, reach to talk to their representative, they're like, no, you're my representative. And so that is part of what I carry. That is part of my battle. I was dealing with another situation just the other day of a 5-year-old in the school system. You know, her mom had to pull her out of the school system because she was being bullied in the school system. And so those are stuff I carry, and it's not something I take lightly. You know, I am one of those people. I carry other people's problems, and it keeps me up at night. You know, when people call me and say this going on, my husband can tell you I'm up all night worried. My mind won't shut down because I'm worried about what's going on. And so when I said I'm tired, you know, that is what I was talking about in a moment, because here I am thinking we're going to be doing some good things on the House floor that's going to pass some good policy, and here we are addressing policies that's going to have this major effect on communities of color and on the LGBTQ community. It's going to have major impacts on it, and so yeah, I was tired, but I done moved on from tired, and now I'm in fighting mode.
Well, and I've also had conversation with you, and I was struck by how remarkably optimistic you were, and we were having conversations about working with the other side, the other aisle, and so I wonder, because I contrasted that with what I saw in the Tribune, and so maybe we can talk about that side as well, because you know, we had the legislative roundup with the Sunshine Caucus. And there's a lot of unity there, and there was a lot of talk about reaching out to the other side and everything. Are you still experiencing that as well? Are you finding allies in the state legislature, or are we moving the right direction? Are we moving the wrong direction? Which way are we going?
Absolutely, I have allies up at the Capitol. I have a lot of people who are willing to work with me, a lot of people who understand me, a lot of people who come to me and say, thank you for saying what you said, because it is what we felt. But I think a lot of people are in this situation. I'm in this unique situation where I can kind of say what everybody is thinking because of the community I represent and the people I represent. But there are some people up there, they cannot say what they're feeling because of the community and the backlash that they would probably get. And so a lot of times I get to say those things, and just be honest and be my authentic self up there. I'm up there for a reason of making a difference. If my community decides to give this seat to someone else, I'm good with that because I feel it's their seat. So my job is to represent them. And so if I am moved out of this position, then I feel that it's time for there's another cause for me to fight on and another position, and then God is moving me somewhere else. So I'm good, but I know that there are some people up there that they want to stay in this position and they cannot say what they want to say or do what they want to do. And so I end up being that voice.
There are politicians that are up there and representatives that are up there that can't say what they're thinking. What does that say about what's happening in our politics, in our just the general nature of our politics right now, from your perspective?
You know, we're just kind of moving towards those who have the loudest voice, um, the ones who people who are reaching out to their legislators. They're the ones that the politicians are listening to. And a lot of times, unfortunately, we have people who are extreme. And I'm not just talking about extreme on the right side, but I'm talking about extreme on the left side, because we have those individuals also. I remember during the whole protest with that happened with after the murder of George Floyd, you know, we had people. We were trying to meet with some of the protesters and some of the people, but some of the individuals felt that I was not progressive enough for them, and so we have those people who are extreme on both sides, and those are the people whose voices are being heard because those are the people who are coming up to the Capitol. They're letting their opinions being heard. They're the people who are organizing. And so those are the people that a lot of the legislators listen to and cater to. That's their base. And so I think that is what is happening right now.
It seems to be a self-reinforcing cycle because it turns off a lot of the other people. I see that with my students. They're turned off by politics because it gets more and more extreme on both sides.
Absolutely.
I had a similar experience when we did 2 events, Back the Blue and Black Lives Matter. We did them together, and we were trying to get the police to speak with Black Lives Matter and some local politicians. And people were sending threats and things like that just for having. I'm sure you receive that all the time, just for having those discussions. This was a record year. We always say that, but a record year in terms of spending. Is $28 billion budget. There's a 45-day session, and I asked the Sunshine Caucus about this. Is that enough time? Do you like the way it's set up? It's the shortest in the nation. It's a citizen legislature, and what they said was that there's merit to that because they have people, have to live under the laws they pass and go home and experience it. What's your thinking about it?
I guess I do like the 45-day. It's intense 45-day. And when you have individuals like myself who work a full-time job, I know a lot of people think that legislators, we make a ton of money. Let me tell y'all, we don't make any money. We don't make a whole lot of money. And so I work a full-time job. And so I think those 45 days allow people like me who may not be able to get more time off from their job to go in, do a job and kind of, help make changes. And so I at this point, I don't have any issues with the 45 days.
Part of that budget was passing historic tax cuts. I believe you were against that. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I voted against the tax cut. I got to remember why. It had something to do with the food tax, I think.
Yeah, so they were going to add on the food tax and ultimately did, but they were reducing the top rate, from whatever 4.8% down to 4.6%. So there were big tax cuts, but then I think to help get it through, it was going to be to repeal some of the taxes on food.
Yes, yeah. And I believe that was the reason why I voted against it. We got so much stuff going on.
Yeah, 1,300 proposed bills, 500 passed. Yeah, 45 days. My interns are exhausted. They're still asleep.
Yeah, and it had to do. I believe it had to do with the food taxes, if my memory serves me correctly.
That added it
in. When I vote for things, I always look at how it's going to impact the people I serve, and the people I serve are moderate to lower income people. My community is made up a lot of the working class. The working class people who some of them holding 2 and 3 jobs down to make ends meet. And so I always look at how this is going to impact them. And I think when I went through and looked at the bill, I didn't see how this was going to positively impact those people I serve. And so in the end, I ended up voting against it.
You sponsored a bill that ultimately was passed on sickle cell disease. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yes.
I don't know if everyone knows, I think a lot of people have heard of sickle cell anemia, but maybe, explain a little bit about it and the bill and how it got passed.
Sure. So sickle cell is a disease that's mostly impact people with African descent. And what happens is instead of, and I'm not a medical doctor, but instead of their cells being round, it's more of a C shape, which makes it difficult for the blood to travel in the body. which in turn causes the blood to clog up and causes extreme pain. I became interested in this bill because last summer I had a good friend of mine, granddaughter died as a result of sickle cell. I had parents who were telling me that there were doctors in the state that did not know how sickle cell, and so they were taking their children out of state to get treatment. They left. I have another good friend of mine whose daughter ended up moving to Texas, who had sickle cell because she felt that it was that the treatment there was better. And so that's how I became interested in it. And the life expectancy of a person with sickle cell is like 54, I believe. And so we live in one of the states with some of the best research, some of the best medical treatment. And so I decided to try to bring attention to this. And so what I've done is wrote this bill. And what it's going to do is the health department is going to give us a snapshot of what is happening around sickle cell in this state. It's going to be able to give me data and numbers and make some recommendation on some things that we need to be doing in this state to address this issue. But also I've been working with the American Red Cross around blood donation. Because people who have sickle cell can use up, if I'm not mistaken, 100 pints, I believe, a year. And so I've been working with them, particularly trying to get individuals with African descent to donate blood, and so we can have that reserve as people are going to give blood.
That's great. I know another issue that's important to you is housing, homelessness.
Absolutely.
I think it was about $200 million that was dedicated this year for affordable housing and to tackle homelessness. You know, it's hard to understand. I ask these questions and it reminds me, I think it was Nixon who said, you know, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and it starts to add up to real money. How do we know? Is 198 enough? Is it too much? I mean, I asked the same question on Tuesday, and it's really hard to know. But I can ask you, from your perspective, are we doing enough on that issue? Because I get this question from my students all the time. Affordable housing, I have trouble finding it here to go to school. What can we be doing better? Is that enough? Doing more?
I think it's a start. I do think it's a really good start. And what excites me is that not only did I think it was 50 million towards deeply affordable housing, but I think we also did another 50 million towards home buyer program that's going to help individuals with down payment and closing costs on housing. Because I think when we look at issues around affordable housing, we have to look at this in different perspectives, right? We have those individuals and families who may not be homeless, but they are the working poor, or we have working class who want to set down roots in the state of Utah or and be here long term. That I think and help build communities that I think we need to, but they can't afford a house. That we need to look at how do we assure that they're able to maintain housing. We also have those individuals who are homeless, who are living on the streets. And when we look at that, we've got to look at different segments of housing. It's not a one size fits all. We need to, and I think we are coming to this realization that there are people who are homeless that are never going to have the ability to live on their own. They're going to have to be case managed the rest of their lives because of of mental illness or what have you. They're going to have to be case managed. So we need to look at that type of housing. Then we need to look at housing for those individuals who just need that little help to get back on their feet and to get back out there in the world and to get back into the community. So we have to look at that type of housing. We have to look at housing for students. And so it's not just a one size fits all. And then we have to also support on how do we prevent people from becoming homeless. How do we deal with that? How do we start working with people around trauma at a very early age? I can tell you when I was working as a licensed clinical social worker, and a lot of the individuals I work with, when we started talking and I started doing therapy, it always led back to seem like some childhood trauma, that kind of untreated childhood trauma that led to them becoming addicted, getting to substance abuse and living on the streets. And so it's not just a one size, it's more than less build housing, we have a whole array of issues and things that we have to deal with in order to deal with the housing crisis that is happening.
And it's funny, I hear that a similar answer from both sides of the aisle on that. And so I hope that we can continue to move on and work on that issue, improve things. You also had another victory with respect to insurance for children who are undocumented. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was Senator Escamilla. Yeah, she
You
had.
worked on that as well, didn't you?
I did not work on that, but I count it as one of our victories because we wanted that to pass so fast. She had been working on that for about 2 or 3 years now, which is going to be able to provide health insurance for children, for our kiddos, whether they're documented or undocumented. You know, we
Is there bipartisan support for that?
it was bipartisan support for that, and it passed. It passed. And so that was I think one of the biggest victories, and for me, because of the large population that I serve, that's in my community of immigrants, and I think it's a big win. It was a big win.
One of the ones that didn't pass was HB 434, which was the Parent Student Rights and School Safety. I don't know a lot about that. I believe that you were involved in that, or sponsored it. Tell us a little bit about that and what happened there.
Yeah, so that bill ended up not even making it out of Rules Committee. And so what it is, it was kind of an extension. You all probably know I ran the bill, the Izzy bill, back about 2 years ago. We had a young girl that died by suicide, 10 years old, as a result of being bullied in school because around her mental health and because of racial issues. And so I passed the Izzy's bill. And so this was kind of just an extension of that. Making sure that parents receive the information that is needed around bullying and looking at addressing it more in our school system. So, yeah, it unfortunately, I was working on that with the United Way, but it also was going to address some of the issues that the DOJ was concerned about in Davis County also. Is what I was trying to do. I know a lot of parents want DOJ out of the school system, and we want them out of too, but we also want our children to be safe. And so I'm always looking at how do we keep all of our children safe in the school system. And so, but unfortunately, it ended up getting held in rules. We'll probably work on it this summer and just probably try to come back with it this upcoming session.
What did make it through was Candace Perucci's bill, the school voucher bill. That's an interesting issue because when you look around the nation, I'm often surprised at the groups sometimes that support voucher bills because they say if we're stuck in a school system that isn't working and we need to get people out. You see it in the African American community in Baltimore and Washington, D.C. There's a lot of support sometimes for voucher bills. And so it creates kind of odd coalitions. What about for this one? We got a teacher pay increase with it.
Yes.
But what did you think of that bill?
Yes. So I voted against the bill, and I did not like the fact that they put the teachers' raise along with the voucher bill, that they coupled those bills together. That was number one. And I'm all about giving our teachers a raise. My oldest daughter is a school teacher. Lord knows I want her out of my pocket. So I'm all about a raise. But it just kind of, it was, I didn't like putting those together, but also, again, this was a bill I looked at, how is this going to impact the people I serve? So when I started looking at my district, the bill was for $8,000. I mean, the voucher is for $8,000. The average cost of a private school is like $11,000. There are no private schools in my district, which means I have people in my district who are going to have to travel, who are already working 2 and 3 jobs, are going to have to look at how do I get my kid to this private school in this other area, get to work, and get back in time. And so I didn't see it benefiting. Now I understand also that it works with homeschooling. But like I said, I have people in my district tend to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. It's hard enough getting individuals in my community to come out to school night back to school nights and coming out to different events, parent teacher meetings because of their job schedules. And so I didn't see how this was going to benefit them in a positive way, and then it's taking money out of the public school system. And so I didn't see how it was going to benefit them. And so I had to vote against it. And besides, my community sent me lots of emails and said, we don't like this bill, please vote against it.
Yeah, so when I get questions from students, I get a lot about education, a lot about housing and homelessness, and a lot about LGBTQ. And in fact, you put those three issues together, and when I ask students to submit questions, that's easily half, a quarter of which, 20 to 25% at least, is about the trans issue. And we had several bills that were up. One failed on the gender affirming HB 132, and then but SB 16 that barred gender transition did pass, and we talked about it on Tuesday. And the response was, look, we need to have a moratorium and take a look at this, pause, and decide. That was the answer that I got from most of the legislators outside of the Sunshine Caucus. What's your position on it?
I think we need to be very careful when we take away, when we start looking at parents and their ability to make decisions about their kids. I think we need to be very careful with that. And so that is my biggest concern with that bill. But there also was another bill that passed, I think, that kind of flew under the radar a little bit, that said that you have to be 16, I think 16 or old in order to change, and for any type of change on your birth certificate, to be able to change from, the sex on your birth certificate. That also passed. But we did have a victory. We did ban conversion therapy, which I think was awesome. And I believe the governor signed that bill yesterday. And so, although we did have some losses, we did have some victories. And so, I kind of celebrate the victories, and then we dust ourselves off and go back up again next year.
What about it was defeated, but the prohibition on diversity, equity, and inclusion in universities and schools and that sort of thing? Where did you stand on that? How did you feel about that?
I was against that bill also. They're trying. What the bill does is defund DEI at the university level, and so what they decided to do was send it to interim study for the summer, and so we're going to kind of look at that and see. That's one of these areas where we're going to all have to come to the table and try and come up with something that hopefully we can all agree upon, and try to educate the history of why this was in place and what's the need for it. I think that is going to be the most important piece of it.
Because it's remarkable the degree to which your budget is passed, balanced, they're able to have surplus, give tax breaks and everything, and then these issues come up, and I wonder, how do you come to the table? I guess it kind of circles us back to the beginning of this conversation. How do you come to the table on these issues, which seem to really light people up, on both sides? How do you do that? How do you start that process? Is it behind the scenes, and then does it look better behind the scenes than it does?
It does. It looks a lot better behind the scenes than it do out in public. There is a lot of conversation, I think, in education that needs to be had. I think, when you start looking at those bills, I think everyone is so caught up in their own opinion and their own ways of wanting to do things. For me, what I do is I try to first understand why the person is feeling the way they feel, and try to understand their background and where they're coming from. Because I think if I can understand that, then I think we can have a conversation. But a lot of people, I think some people are just so bent on it's going to be my way. But I think we get a lot. I think we get a lot done when because we are able to come to the table in this state a lot of times and have those difficult conversations.
which is nice to hear. Yeah, when we teach how to have a civil conversation, that's the thing. Stepping inside someone else's shoes, the ability to see it from their perspective, it creates empathy. And if you have empathy, then and that's true for everyone, you know. Yeah. Well, I think we're getting pretty close to where we can kind of have some people start asking some other questions. And I would love to hear from someone from the audience. If Ben would like to go around. And then I have a few follow-up questions if we have. Anyone like to ask a question? Yeah, Dina.
Hi. Hello. First, thank you for coming down here to talk to us. I work for the local school district, specifically with our homeless community. And when you said that the bill hasn't passed, what does that mean? Like that funding, when is that actually going to come out to the communities? And how can that be applied? Like what can that be used for?
You talk about around housing.
Yes. Like can that be used to build like more homeless shelters, those kind of things? Or how is that funding going to affect or help solve homelessness?
You know, the bill, the budget this year, it was $50 million for deeply affordable housing. My guess is it's probably going to be going through nonprofits to build affordable housing. Or oh no, what? Probably the Pamela Atkins Trust Fund. There's a trust fund that is run by the state that builds housing. And I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about how the budget is work. The budget is done. What I'll do is I'll connect with you afterwards. I don't have all the answers exactly how that's going to string down, but I'll get them for you. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. To piggyback. So you talk about like deeply affordable housing. What does that look like? Because honestly, I'm going back to North Carolina because I couldn't find housing. Like that was just a huge issue here, among other things. But so what is that going to look like? This deeply affordable housing, and when does that go into effect? Like when will the community be able to see the benefit of that budget and the deeply affordable housing?
She's one of my students, one of my really great students, and I'm losing her because of the housing. So yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I have a daughter that's living with me now because she cannot afford housing. I cannot give you an answer of when we're going to see that in the community because it's going to take a while to get those housing built and to work all of that out. And so I wish I could give you an answer saying by this date we're going to have this done. Unfortunately, I don't know. I can't give you an answer to that.
It sounds like you're building. Is it also going to take
Yeah, I understand. A housing exactly that's on the look. We want to go in because I know, like in Salt Lake, part of what we've done around the homeless issues is converted abandoned hotels into housing, and I cannot say. I honestly cannot say how exactly that is going to look. We do have someone who is working on that, and so I don't know. I wish I could tell you how exactly that was going to look.
We need to rethink the way we think about housing in the state. I've had conversations with people who are involved in zoning, and this idea that just you have all of these suburbs and large homes, and we've got this concept in political science called NIMBY, not my backyard, and don't want apartments, and we don't want townhomes. Everything. We need to rethink that. I've even spoken with politicians, local politicians here, and said they're starting to think we need to do this in a different way. Is that your position too?
I do believe we have to look at this in a different way. I live on the and represent the west side of Salt Lake City, and so my community used to be where you can afford to go and buy a home. and it was a place for families, starting families. We buy start a home, and that is no longer the truth where I live. But also, my district seems to be the place when they start talking about affordable housing. Is the place the people automatically think that this is where we need to sit all of this. We want it all on this side of town. And yes, because of NIMBY, I have had people in my community say that they're not NIMBY, but they're not only in my backyard community. My community is more than willing and have been open to taking on, treatment programs, have been open to taking on housing. But unfortunately, because they're moderate to lower income people, they feel that all of it should be there. And I think it should be spread out around the state. We need to look at that. If someone becomes homeless here in the state, in St. George, I'm about to say Georgia, and St. George, there's no reason why they shouldn't be supported here and stay here and live here and not have to go to Salt Lake City to find treatment or programming or housing. We should be able to support people in their community where they are and where they grew up.
And that would require also, based on discussions I've had with people, a different mindset on transit. Now, there was $1 billion, I believe, that was allocated towards transit, and that put everything in. And Spencer Cox has said he wants high-speed rail from Salt Lake all the way down through here, and possibly to Las Vegas. Everyone that's seen what happened in Bakersfield, trying to get LA up to San Francisco, might think that that's going to be impossible. But how can we rethink transit? Because I'm leaving from this meeting and I'm driving to Salt Lake. I am not looking forward to it. Help me out there.
Yeah, we do need to look at how we're doing transit here in the state of Utah and how we can move people around without being in their cars, and mainly for the environmental reasons. We all know that when winter comes, I have had a daughter who suffers from asthma as a result of this. So I'm very interested in what we're doing around transit, but I'm now being brought into the conversation because I found out, and my community is in an uproar about this because they are expanding I-15 now. And with that expansion between Fort South and Salt Lake in the Farmington area, they're taking out some of the housing in my districts, and some of these are affordable housing. And so we're now in the Black community, like I said, they're in the uproar, they're not happy about this. And so the question becomes, how do we move people around the state of Utah more rapidly and while protecting the environment? A couple of years ago, Senator Escamilla and I ran a resolution around transportation and railroads, because a constituent of ours came to us and said, we have a lot of railroad tracks. Why are we not using them? They're not being used. And so we ran a bill, but it was kind of shut down. People didn't like it for whatever reason. And so I am concerned about the transportation, but more from an environmental reason. My district, again, we have some of the worst air in the state of Utah, some of the highest asthma rates among children. And so I'm always concerned about the impact. And then I'm getting the inland port in my district. And so we're just concerned about the impact that it's going to have on the environment.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I just had a question about educational vouchers. My family is teachers. I have a lot of them in my family, and I'm becoming a teacher as well. But I have seen a lot of cases where people are getting bullied in school and people get homeschooled, and the parents just kind of leave the education in the child's hands. So I guess what I'm asking is just, how are you restricting the money from those vouchers that are being pulled away from public schools to actually go to the child's education?
They're not being restricted. One of the reasons you pointed out, another reason why I voted against it, is not being restricted. And especially in the private school, and they don't have to hire a licensed teacher to teach in the school system. And so no, it is there's no restrictions on it. And so yeah, there's no accountability on it. So I'm worried about it.
Do you think that later on down the line, there will be some restrictions to make sure that that money does go to the child's education?
Absolutely, I do believe. I do believe. I find that when we run bills, and then when we start seeing the impact of the bills, then we go. There's other legislation to try to tweak what is happening. And so, if I would think that this upcoming session we may see some bills that's going to be able to twerk it. But more importantly, we need people like you and your parents. Like I said, my oldest daughter is a school teacher. We need people like you all to speak out and say that this is what needs to happen.
Hi, I have some concern about the wildlife protection bill that was passed right at the end of the session in regards to the lack of protection for mountain lions. Can you say anything about that?
Yeah, you know, I think we're all allowed mistakes, and that was one of my biggest mistakes I made. I own up to that. A lot of times when we see a bill and it goes to the Senate and comes back, things have changed in it. And that was one of those bills where mountain lions are not protected, and they're saying, if I'm not mistaken, they're saying that they could hunt mountain lions. And so I own up to that. After I voted for that bill and it came through, and then went back and was reading, I was like, oh, holy crap, what did I just do? And so yeah, and I think it was a lot of us who ended up voting for that bill, and it was like this is not a good bill. So yeah, it did pass, but I'm accountable. It was one of my biggest mistakes of this session.
Rarely hear mea culpas like that. From my perspective, I appreciate that because I make mistakes. My wife, reminds me of how many mistakes I make every single day. And in my job and everything.
Absolutely, we make mistakes. I don't always get it right up there. I have put my foot in my mouth a number of times and have gone back and like, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that, or I should not have voted for that bill, or I should have voted for that bill. And so yeah, it happens. It happens. I own up to
When
it.
you're in a job where you speak a lot, you're going to make mistakes.
You gonna
Yeah.
make
And,
mistakes.
and when you're in a job as difficult as yours and as intense with those 45 days,
And you have bills
yeah.
coming at you all the time. You have people coming at you all the time, and and I always have a great intern. If any of you are interested in interning, just so you know, we have intern positions up there. But
let me piggyback on that. My interns that listen, it's a double-edged sword for me because a lot of them get jobs coming straight out of the internship, and I lose them forever. Or they just, they say, "Well, I'm going to go to the University of Utah now. I'm going to stay up here," but they consistently say, "This changed my life." Consistently say that, and that they're exhausted, but that they had a wonderful experience. So yeah, if you want to do an internship program, Institute of Politics, we sponsor those, and we even help provide scholarships. So yeah, get in touch with us if that's something you want to do. Yeah.
I have one last question. I'm from Germany, so I'm kind of looking into politics and the situation, and it seems like it is very divided. Like there's only, either this side or the other side. And I'd like to know what you think, representatives or politicians can do to bring the country back together and kind of model the idea of having open, difficult conversations with both sides that are bringing us forward and not just shutting the door and avoiding conversations. Like, how can that be modeled through our politicians?
our politicians here in Utah,
Yes.
and it does happen here in Utah, believe it or not. And I have my former colleague, former Representative Laz here, and he can tell you, we do a lot work across the aisle that people don't see and people don't know about. And I think we are a lot more civil towards each other than other states, or especially at a federal level. I don't know what to do at the federal level. I think there's for some reason I think we're just so stuck in our own ideology that we're not willing to listen to what the other person has to say and realize, and think that maybe the other person may have something to bring to the table. You know, I always said I don't think Republicans have all of the answers, and I don't think Democrats have all of the answers. But I think working together, we can come up with a solution that we all can agree on. But we all have to be willing to kind of let down those guards and those barriers and have those difficult conversations, have those honest conversations around different things that we are scared of, and you know, those questions that we're scared to ask.
And would you agree that we need to get more people involved? I mean,
Absolutely.
it was like we were saying about the cycle of people not getting involved because they're turned off by the extremes, but by doing that, it continues to create more extremism and it just self-reinforcing. We've got to get more people involved.
You know, I think more people have to get involved, and getting involved don't necessarily mean running for office. You know, get in where you fit in. Find out what your niche is in all of this. For some people, it just may be working on a campaign. For some people, it may be working with some group that has concern about the environment. But there's something that I believe that we all can do. We just need to figure out what that is and where we feel comfortable. You know, for some people, it's just letter writing. You know, sending emails. I have constituents who text me when I'm on the House floor who listening to the debate and saying, I don't like this bill. Let me tell you why I don't like this bill. Or could you ask this question for me? Because I need to understand this. So I think there's a way for all of us to get involved. But I would tell people, please get involved.
That's remarkable. Do you have constituents texting?
Oh, I have, because I love my constituents.
David's laughing about that. Oh no. Is this an issue for a therapist? Yeah, okay.
Oh yeah, I have some people in my community who are very involved in everything that's going on politically, and if they don't appreciate or like something, oh, believe me, especially my senior citizens. I love my senior citizens in my district because they are very involved. They know what's happening. They know what's going on, and they will keep you up to date on everything that is happening.
Talk about that a lot with my students. So, yeah, the elderly are involved in all sorts of ways. They'll handwrite letters. When I worked in politics, we used to assign points to that, and
Yes.
bigger points than And I say, if this is why they get what they want. If you want something, you got to get involved.
Got to get involved.
Yeah.
We've got another question right over
Oh,
here.
great. Okay.
So, with attacks in the LGBTQ community, specifically trans rights being under attack, do you have a proposal, or has there been a proposal for a way to protect trans people and the LGBTQ community at large?
I don't have a proposal. I work with Troy Williams with Equality Utah, and I take my lead from him and with the Pride Center in Utah. They're the ones that usually come to me and say, okay, this is what's happening, this is where we stand, and this is where we need to work. And so I don't have any proposal, but I work closely with them on as they provide solutions.
Great. Okay. Oh, we have one more question. All right, we'll take one more and we'll wrap it up.
I just had another quick question about the voucher bill. I was really curious and I started reading into it. Personally, I'm pretty devastated to hear that there's money that could potentially be going to public school and that's been going to private schools. This is more of a logistics question, so I guess anyone or if either of you have the answer. It says, so it's taxpayer funded money that is going to, help. It's going to send students to private schools. I'm wondering who decides what students are being sent to the private schools?
You mean who is the private schools that
Right.
decide that? Yeah, the parents in the private schools can decide that they're going to accept this child, or they can decide that they're not going to accept this child. So it's all on the parent and the private school who ultimately decides.
That's what I was afraid of. Things.
So I don't have a question. I just have a comment. Representative Hollins was just speaking about how engaged her seniors are. The seniors, even here in St. George, are engaged because I receive the calls. So I'm her personal secretary, and it's amazing. Our senior citizens are the bomb. And when they call, they get it clear, it's out, and that's the bottom line.
All right. Well, Representative Hollins, thank you for making this long trip down here. We appreciate it. We recorded it. We're streaming it, and it's an honor to meet you. And we really appreciate you kind of wrapping up our legislative roundup and what happened in the general session. We wish you the best going forward, and we hope you come and visit us again.
Absolutely.
Hey.
I'll come and visit you when it's warmer.
When it's warm. Okay. We'll schedule this for April next time. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.